continuing on our series about what if it all goes right. And I thought it was interesting that today's daily word is dominion. And it's actually kind of a word that I'm seeing used a lot more in our Unity vernacular to describe one of the 12 powers of unity. That we've often used the word power, the power to choose, the power to choose our thoughts and our actions, and now we're using the word dominion more to talk about how we direct the course of our life. So I heard a story this week that I thought fits right in with this word. It has to do with 3 pets, 3 dear beloved animals that died and went to heaven. One was a dog, one was a parakeet, one was a cat. And they were all good animals, but of course God thought when they got up to heaven that she should sit down with each one and get to know them a little bit before she decided where they would be in heaven. And so God turns to the dog and says, well, the book of life indicates that you've been a very good boy. But tell me in your own words, what are your basic principles? What do you believe? So the dog said, I believe in loyalty and companionship and love. I've been a cherished part of my owner's family for many years. Wherever they came home, I was really glad to see them. And so God said, that's wonderful. Clearly you have a pure and loving heart. You shall sit here on my right side in heaven. And then God turned to the parakeet. And she said, well, what about you? What do you believe? And the parakeet said, I believe in color and being flamboyant and creating beautiful music and song. For many years, I displayed my beautiful feathers at my owner's home and filled the house with song and music. And so God said, that's wonderful. You're so beautiful. Your song shall echo throughout the universe, so you may sit at my left side. And then God finally turned to the cat. My little dear friend cat, tell me about you. What do you believe? And the cat looked at the God's throne and said, I believe that you're sitting on my seat. You're sitting in my chair. So that's a sense of dominion. You know where you belong. Hey, you're in my seat. Move over. But I feel like this what if process, this process of just asking that question, whatever comes up, whatever we want to move forward on in our lives, is a way for us to claim dominion over our lives, to choose to move forward in the course of our lives or in the world in a better way. And I feel like I'm seeing this mindset kind of seeping into the consciousness of our ministry. I'm hearing people, whether they're in the kitchen or in the boardroom or around the church, asking that question, what if whatever somebody mentioned, well, what if? What if it all goes right? And I remember I had a friend who was a minister years ago who said, that whenever something would come up in his life that he tended to be worried about, and people were saying, worst case scenario, well, what if that happens or this happens? And he would always go to his journal, he'd write down the thing that he might tend to be worried about, and then he'd leave a big space in the journal. And then he'd come back to it a few days later or a week or two later, and he always found that whatever that worst case scenario was never came to pass, and always something good came out of it. And he could write that in his journal after the thing that he had a concern about. So today I wanted to help us focus on another little aspect of this, and I thought this was interesting, that of the 3 chapters that we're the reading for today, the title of one of the chapters is Keeping Your Head in the Clouds. But then I noticed on the reading syllabus that was typed up, it said heart, keeping your heart in the clouds. And so I thought, well, maybe it's a typo, and then I thought, maybe not. Maybe it's supposed to be both, keeping both our head and our heart in the clouds. Maybe we're meant to be like giraffes who can, because they're high up, they can see a long distance, they have great vision. And I've always loved this fact, actually, that giraffes have the largest heart of any land mammal. It takes a lot to pump the blood up to their head, but they have big hearts, and they can see a long distance and great vision. And I think that's what our What If Up process helps us to do, is to be open-hearted, to open our hearts, and be able to see with great vision what's possible. So I don't know, maybe that's why I heard about a giraffe that applied for monk training to become a monk, and somebody said, well, why is he doing that? And so I guess he felt a higher calling. I don't know. I had to slip that in. But all of us, I think, can feel a higher calling in life to be like that giraffe. And so in the chapter this week, Mindy Audlin shared a really wonderful story that lifted my heart when I heard it. And so I wanted to share that. And it was about a woman named Holly, whose mother was in the hospital, and she was very sick. And when Holly walked through the door of the hospital room to go visit her mother, she could see that her mom was in a lot of distress and having difficulty breathing and pain. And it was too early. She wasn't due yet to get her next dose of painkillers. And so Holly just sat there with her mother and tried to comfort her. But she had this thought that kept running through her mind. She was part of a What If Up group, and she had this question that kept coming to her: what if? What if I could be a source of strength and faith and optimism for my mother? We could ask that for ourselves about anybody. But she just kept, what if? What if somehow I could be a source of strength and faith and optimism for my mother? And as she sat there with her mother, who was clearly in a lot of distress, suddenly the thought dawned on her, what's going on? My mom's having a panic attack. And the nurses, nobody knows what to do about this, but she's hyperventilating. And then Holly thought, I think I know what to do to help her. So she, and she says, you have to know that this whole experience was totally out of character for Holly. She said she never thought of herself as a very intuitive person, and her family was never really very touchy-feely, and so to sit next to someone and put your hands on them was not normally the way they interacted in her family. But she just instinctively went over and sat next to her mother, put her hands on her mother's shoulder. She looked into her mother's eyes, and she said, Mom, I think you're having a panic attack. And I think I know what to do to help you if you're willing to play along with me. And her mom just said, I'll do anything, I'm in a lot of distress here. And so Holly looked at her mom, she says, just look into my eyes and let's breathe. Let's breathe together. And her dad was sitting on the other side of the room, and he said, what are you doing? Is this going to help or anything? and she just said, I don't know, but let's try it. And then after a minute or two, his cell phone rang, so he got up and left the room. And she sat there with her mother for like a half an hour, or for a few minutes, and the panic attack subsided. She started to calm down, and they kept breathing together, and then Holly just had this meditation come through. She said she'd never led a meditation before, but she just guided her mother through kind of a visualization of being peaceful. And then she calmed down, and she was able to lay down in bed and relax, and actually go to sleep and not be afraid that she wouldn't wake up again. And then this incredible transformation happened. After a few days, after a week, her mother's spirit lifted. She started to feel better. She was able to get out of bed into a wheelchair, and then she was ready to be released from the hospital. And the night before she was released, she was visiting with her daughter Holly. And she said to Holly, she said, "Thank you so much for loving me enough to do what you did. But I don't think there's anybody else in the world that could have helped me in that moment. I believe you saved my life. How did you know what to do?" And she shared for the first time with her family that she was going to this little group where they did what if questions, and that she had this question running through her mind: what if I could be a source of strength and faith and optimism for my mother? And then things just started happening. So I thought, wow, what if for all of us, what if there's somebody in our lives that we're meant to be a source of strength and faith and optimism for them? What if we trusted our guidance? You know, if something comes to you, to put your hand on your shoulder, or to say, share something, or pick up the daily word and read it. What if? And that's really, I think, a way of our claiming dominion for our lives and our world, to say, I have the, I can't always, you can't control stuff that happens in your life or what comes into your world, but we can always choose how we respond to it. We can choose the questions we ask ourselves that prompt us to what we want to think or say or do. So we've got reality and we've got reality. And last week I put this quote up on the screens because I was really struck by it, that most of us have been taught to face reality long before we were taught that we create reality. You know, when you were growing up, anybody told, "I'll just get real," or "face reality. You'll never do this or that," or just deal with it, accept it, or whatever, get over it. But Mindy says, and what we teach in Unity is that, well, things happen in the world, and things, but we can create our experience of that reality. So this kind of begs the question, what is reality anyway? What do we mean by that? And she does a beautiful job of explaining exactly what we talk about, Lessons in Truth, written 100 years ago by Emily Cady, and kind of explains it in the same way, that there are really three faces of reality. There's steam, there's water, there's ice. I mean, there's a metaphor we can think of this, and then we could just say, well, it's all H2O, really. So which one of those do you like better? What do you like? Which reality? Pick one. Doesn't matter. If it's a hot summer day, I guess I'd pick the ice cube. My dog likes to lick ice. But steam or water. But, it's easy to look at three different things. It's really the same thing. If we know a little bit about science, what H2O, whether it's steam or whether it's water, running water, or whether it's an ice cube, that at the molecular level, it's exactly the same thing. It's 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. But of course, it's different expressions of it. And a block of ice vibrates more slowly. It's denser in its frequency than water or steam. But just like that analogy, we live in a universe that expresses in 3 different dimensions: form, ideas, and spirit. Or we could say, the next pop quiz here, conscious creator quiz, there is the realm of infinite possibilities. God, spirit, all that is, consciousness. There's no place you can go and not be in the presence of that. And then, so that's like the steam. It's invisible. We can't see it, but we know it's there. And And then ideas are like water, like running water. Last night I was working on this talk, and I woke up in the middle of the night because I had this flood of ideas coming. Things I had to add to my talk this morning. Kept getting up and writing things down. I just couldn't turn it off. And then the physical reality is like the ice cube. And so thoughts at a certain frequency pour through us, pour from this field of infinite possibility, come through as maybe a shower of inspired ideas. And our imagination is sort of the conduit for bringing that frequency of spirit into expression. And we can use our imagination to think, oh my God, all the worst things that could happen, or to open up the possibility, oh my gosh, what good could come out of this? But it's important, I think, for us to realize this next thing that she says, that essentially, we've been taught to create our lives by hacking away at the frozen, icy block of our physical reality. The cold, hard facts of life that we spend a lot of time and energy trying to hack away at that ice cube to make change or get better, rather than working in the realm of steam or water. And I don't know about you, but I'm finding, and I spend a lot of time, I'll admit, working on the hard, cold facts. I'll just admit, it's exhausting. I'm tired. And I don't know if I'm making that much progress. I need to remember to work at the realm of the steam and the water. Because our current reality is the result of a universe of ideas that flows, through us into our consciousness. And so we know this, and we teach this, and we're practicing it, and we need to be reminded of it all the time. And there are wonderful organizations that are doing this, that are having an impact in this way. One of them that she mentions in the book that I've heard about is the Global Peace Project. And I found a picture on the website of the former president of Mozambique. He says, this approach helped bring stability to my country that had been in a civil war for 20 years. But there's also another study that was done in Dallas a few years ago. In the city of Dallas, for 4 months, they made a concentrated effort to really focus on peace. And they brought together small groups of people to practice meditation, and heart math, nonviolent communication techniques, and tapping, EFT, and what-if-upping. And they focused on, and at the time Dallas was one of the top cities in the country with a lot of crime and a lot of murder. And within 4 months of focusing on peace and harmony, they got reports from the 9/11 call centers and many other agencies, and they found that they had reduced the amount of violent crime in the city by 15% in just 4 months by having groups doing all these practices focusing on harmony and peace. So, I feel like what if up as a process is teaching us how we can claim our dominion to direct the course of our lives and our world for the highest good. And it's a step, it's a series of steps to keep our head and our hearts kind of above the fray of things and at a higher level. And here are some steps she suggests. Start where you're at, lift your vision, activate your imagination, and calling it forth. So starting where we're at. It's okay to acknowledge that everything in my life or in the world isn't exactly the way I would like it. There's a lot of some room for improvement. But I always like that distinction between the facts of life and the spiritual truth. That the facts of life may be at any given time. I have a pain in my side, or I feel like I don't have as much money as I'd like to have, or something in my world I'd like to. But facts can change in a moment, in a day, in a few days, in a week. But the spiritual truth is that realm of esteem, of infinite possibility, that's always there. It's always accessible to us. And maybe starting where we're at is just noticing in your thoughts and in your attention and your focus. Well, where am I? What part of reality am I focusing on? Am I at the level of the ice cube? Or am I at the level of the water, my thoughts? Or am I at the level of steam? And then lifting your vision. You know, what else is possible? What if it all goes right? What if by shifting our thoughts and our ideas so they align with the consciousness of peace, that we're really shifting an expression of peace in our whole city, in our whole world? Or what if by elevating my thoughts, my energy, my vibration, get more joy, to be inspired by music like Kevin sings, what if that raises my frequency of love and joy and harmony so that there's more of that in the world? And then the call it forth part. You know, this was the part that I kept waking up during the night. I had to write another example. I thought about Jesus and the stories in the Bible. You know, I think he was the first original what-if-upper, or maybe there were people before him. But when I think about every single thing that I can think about that we know about Jesus, it was an example of what-if-upping. You know, the feeding the multitudes. You know, there were all these people that had been listening to him, and they were hungry, and Jesus said, we need to feed them, and there was only a few loaves of bread and fish. So the disciples, or the voices of the world around him, were all saying, oh no, there's not enough. And what was Jesus' response? Jesus said, well, what if we bless what we got and give thanks for that? What if we lift our thoughts up higher? What if we acknowledge the source of the good that we do have? What if we just start with what we've got? Start handing that out. What if we trust that there's going to be enough? And then I thought about the story of Jesus at the tomb of Lazarus. And the followers, you know, what were they saying? Their voices were saying, oh no, it's too late. You should have gotten here sooner. Why didn't you come right away? He's already dead. He's in the tomb. But what was Jesus' response? Jesus said, well, what if we give thanks in advance? What if we just call him forth? What if it's not too late? You know, and in this story, the tomb, you know, metaphorically, it's anything in our lives that we think is dead or over or closed or the loss of a job. Oh, that's, you know, and a healing or a relationship that we think will never be healed. But what if it's not dead? What if it can be brought back to life again? Or think about his experience being in the boat. He tells Peter to get out and walk on the water. And of course, the voice of Peter says, oh no, I'm scared. Everybody knows you can't walk on water. Well, what was Jesus' response? Jesus said, well, what if you look up rather than down at the water? Oh my God. You know, what if you fix your vision on something further ahead? Look at me, Jesus was saying. When she's saying, just look at that Christ consciousness. Lift your vision. You know, what if you walk toward that? What if you trust? What if you trusted your guidance? Or the story of the Samaritan man. You know, the disciples, everybody said, we know nothing good can ever come from Samaria. But what was Jesus' response? He said, what if good comes from your most unexpected place? What if good comes from a person or a place or a situation that you least expect to come from? What if it comes from someone who looks very different from you or acts differently or worships differently? And the Great Commission, you know, after Jesus crucified, the disciples are saying, oh no, it's the end, he's gone, all hope is lost. Now what do? We're wandering and we're totally lost. But Jesus appears to the disciples again. And he says, he gives them the Great Commission. He says, what if you carry the message? What if you keep going? What if you go and share your experience? What if you take these teachings, and here 2,000 years later, of course, we're still struggling to figure out how to make it real in our lives and live it every day, but he's given us something that has fed our souls for thousands of years. So those are just a few examples. I could go on all day about how Jesus responded to the naysayers, the what-if downers, with a what-if up. But we just have to realize that in this process we're cultivating a mindset that's new, and it's not what we probably grew up with or have been told. And so, the question is, how do we do that? And so there's a chapter, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? I guess I could ask Kevin that. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Well, we've all heard the answer, practice, practice, practice. But I thought it was interesting that the origin of that joke really is, there's different theories about where did it all get started, who said it first, but, it was, apparently there was a violinist that was in New York City, and he was trying to find Carnegie Hall, and he was walking around carrying his violin case, and he stopped and asked somebody on the street, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And he was expecting to get directions, go right, go left. But the person said, practice, practice, practice. And I thought, well, how is that kind of a metaphor for our lives that sometimes we experience being lost on the streets of a busy city? That often, or I know I do that sometimes in the busyness of our lives, or in the midst of a barrage of negative news, or people's problems and worries and concerns, we get lost. We lose our way. We don't know how to get to where we want to go. We temporarily lose our spiritual center. We forget everything that we heard on Sunday morning, or we forget the daily word message that we read that morning. So we need some way to get back, to find our way. Or we start listening to what everybody else is saying, and then we think, oh man, maybe I should be worried about that too, maybe. So, this is the hard part. Not only do we have to have sign that trains our thoughts, but we have to have sign that keeps our hearts open. And she shared this quote from Gandhi. I really liked it, that first they ignore you, and then they laugh at you, then they fight you, but then you win. And she says really that love is the ultimate thing that conquers all. That he knew that to overcome the fear, the only way is through love. The only way to combat fear, to overcome fear, is through the power of love. Love for them love people for who they are, love them for where they are, love them for what they do, and when you love, you win. And they win too. And so I think this process of asking what if up, keeping ourselves in that realm of infinite possibilities, lifts our heads and our hearts up to the clouds, to be above kind of the fray of fear and separation and expansion. And that every time we immerse ourselves in this energy of possibility, we're rewiring our brain, we're practicing, we're bringing ourselves back to our spiritual center. And we're claiming our dominion to direct the course of our lives and be a positive difference in the world. So she ends one of the chapters with this quote from Emily Dickinson, I dwell in possibility. I feel like, boy, that just kind of says it all to me anyway. It's just possibility. That whatever's going on, there's always the possibility. There's always another possibility or more possibilities. So, with those thoughts, I want to take that into our meditation time and take a few minutes to dwell in the realm of possibility, which to me is what meditation is all about, is being in possibility, and it's possibility that brought Kevin to us this morning. He's going to lead us in singing together, Gentle with Myself.
I will be gentle with myself. I will be gentle with myself. And I will hold myself like a newborn baby child. I will be gentle with myself. I will be gentle with myself. And I will hold myself like a newborn baby child. I will be tender with my heart. I will be tender with my heart. And I will hold my heart like a newborn baby child. I will be tender with my heart. I will be tender with my heart. And I will hold my heart like a newborn baby child. And I will only go as fast as the slowest part of me feels safe to go. And I will only go as fast as the slowest part of me feels safe to go. I will be easy on myself. I will be easy on myself. And I love myself like a newborn baby child. I will be easy on myself. I will be easy on myself. And I love myself like a newborn baby child. And I will only go as fast as the slowest part of me feels safe to go. And I will only go as fast as the slowest part of me feels safe to go. Gentle with myself. I am gentle with myself. I am gentle with myself. And I hold myself like a newborn baby child. I am gentle with myself. I am gentle with myself. And I hold myself like a newborn baby child. And I rock myself like a newborn baby child. And I hold myself like a newborn baby child. And I love myself like a
wonderful to express appreciation for a beautiful song. So let us take a few deep breaths together as we do just as the words of the song have led us to do, to be gentle with ourselves, to rock ourselves, to imagine that we are like Holly with her mother, that we are divinely guided to know just what to do, to reassure ourselves that all is well, that in the midst of whatever's going on, we can be a source of faith, strength, and optimism for ourselves and for others. So I invite you to just breathe into that experience of knowing that right here in this moment, the source of comfort, of guidance, of reassurance is right here with you. I claim dominion to choose my thoughts and words and actions. And as I do, I direct the course of my life. And prayer is one of the ways that we focus our energy, our attention, and our intention. Today we're including in our prayers Michelle, Millie, Mary, Julie, Carol, Joyce, Christopher, Mike Serial's mother and family, and Mary Beth as she is moving through this time of accepting and passing of her beloved Aunt Pat. And so Mary Beth is our prayer chaplain today.
As we breathe into our hearts again, feeling the energy of the message, the song, the meditation, we pray, divine wholeness. Allow us to go deeper, to realize we do create our reality. Allow that to sink in right into our hearts. Help us to remember that throughout the week. Help us to trust this information. Remind us to question, what if? What if it all goes well? What if it goes completely in a different direction than I expect it to go? Especially when we think we already know where something is headed. So we're giving thanks for the guidance and the wisdom and the power of our imagination. As we allow our hearts to open and allow this energy to seep in and change us, transform us, and help us to remember we create our own reality. And so it is. Amen. Thank you everyone for your prayers and support for my journey with my aunt. I really felt all your love and support. Thank you so much.
I'm through hoping against all hope. I'm through longing for something gone that'll never return. Think I finally learned. So bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I'm through grieving, I'm through dreaming that the life I had is ever coming back. No more wishing on someone else's star that'll never be mine. I think it's time. So bring it on. Everything new and everything different and everything true. Yeah, I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I've survived many times before, broken hearts and slamming doors. I'll be alright, yes I will, once more, just as I did back then. I'm gonna rise again, so bring it on. Everything new, everything different, and everything true. Yeah, I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything. So bring it on. Everything new, everything different, and everything true. Yeah, I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be